I think I'm getting close to passing out. I don't think my head can tolerate having this decreased blood flow for this long. My God. The wins are just piling in at an ever increasing rate. We are winning in ways we never could have imagined. There's a number of us who've been predicting this this change coming down the line. And like we got to get our heads wrapped around what's happening and the trajectory on things here, because we're exiting the age of being slowly smothered to death, and we're entering the age of explosive things happening. And explosive is very good. It can be very dangerous, but it can be very good. And our job is to ride this tiger, to channel this energy, to take this explosive potential and direct it into building our civilization. Welcome to the ASTROLABE, everyone. Do me a favor and hit the like button. This is going to be a shorter show than usual. I got to try to keep it around an hour and a half because I've got a business meeting to get to. I'm eating my dinner right now. My dinner that is this actually H-E-B brand Coke. For lunch I had H-E-B brand Coke, and I've decided that I'm going to turn over a new leaf. I've heard enough people now talking about this Coke maxing diet that I'm going to give it a shot. I'm going to see what happens. I've heard of people having a lot of really positive benefits from Coke maxing for a period of time. This is one of the great health strategies you would learn if you were in the King Pill Discord. You can go join it at kingpill.com. Based Fat Chad is in the chat. I see him. Kyle, long time no see, man. But yeah, apparently the combination of caffeine, sugar, and CO2 is extremely pro-metabolic. And I'm not memeing. I'm being entirely serious. If you want to talk to some people who might be able to talk to weigh in on this a little more technically, go check out Josh Rayner on Twitter at I think it's Josh Rayner Gold is his Twitter handle. And then we have our own. I won't dox him. I don't know if he's in the chat or if he's listening, but we have our own our own schizo health boy in the King Pill Discord, and he's been doing the same thing. So we're gonna give it a shot for a little while. I've done crazier things, dietary wise. Nicotine. Yeah, nicotine, caffeine, CO2, sugar, protein. This is the American diet, man. We are America maxing. I'm gonna finish off this case of the H-E-B Cokes, and then I'm just gonna go for good old Coke. All right. Vorpal Anvil says, here I am putting coconut oil in my black coffee like a pleb. I've been there. I've actually done that. It's not too bad. I would recommend. Coconut oil with coffee is great. Get some sugar with it as well. It minimizes some of the potential negative effects of the caffeine. I've been experimenting with the gummy bear diet, rip off of the honey diet. Yeah, the honey diet is another very interesting one. There's a lot of people who are eating like a pound of honey a day and experiencing very, very beneficial effects. Lots of mental clarity, lots of energy, sleeping a lot better, clearer dreams. We are in an age where many orthodoxies are being what were thought to be orthodoxies are being torn down and destroyed. Overturned. We've had a broken model of physics, which has led to a broken model of health, broken model of governance, broken model of money. All of these things have all been similarly corrupted in similar ways and to similar extents, and it's been leading us off the straight and narrow path for a while. But now we've got that opportunity. We've got an opportunity to leverage this back, line it up, and fire off into the future. And I'm glad I get to do this with all of you guys. All right. Hit the like button. We got 74 watching right now. Only 25 likes. Let's get that up. Let's see if we can get 100 before the stream ends. It'll be a little shorter, so you got to work a little harder to get it this time, but I'm not going to harass you guys too much. If you'd like to support the show, you can send a super chat. You can become a channel member for $5 a month. You have to do that from a mobile phone. Or you can go to kingpill.com/kingpill, sign up for the King Pill Discord. which is just I still read every single message, and I wake up in the morning and holy crap, I have so many messages that I have to get through. I'm very glad you guys keep me entertained and inspired and focusing on the right things. And then there's also links in the description, buymeacoffee.com/kingpilled, and Cash App link that you can, if you want to throw a little coin over my way, it's very much appreciated as I'm doing this full time now. Let's get us started. We're going to be going through so many wins. You guys are not prepared for just how many wins we're going to talk about today. I've got some other things that some deeper subjects that I'm kind of digging into, and I'm waiting for a little gap in the blitzkrieg here to dig into some things, and some of them are going to be a little more cautionary. There's I don't want to shit on the vibe right now because I think the vibe is good, but it's not going to last forever, and we need to know what we're going to be doing as soon as it starts. As soon as it starts changing, we gotta make hay while the sun shines. But yeah, so we're gonna be piling through so many different wins here today. Before that, of course, though, we have to get a little bit of humor, a little bit of slop. Women are built different.
Would you tell me if I got like really fat or...
You guys you're not built like us. Guys can say shit to each other and guys are like, yeah, you know what? You're right. I got to fucking get my shit together. And women are just weak. So you say something, women are fragile. And here's they're also,
women are fucking stupid.
Well, here's the thing. There's a lot of truth to that. Women are,
oh my God.
Women are weaker and dumber than men.
Weaker and dumb or emotionally intelligent?
No. Women, in a lot of ways, you could just say women are pathetic. And so when you have to speak honestly, you have to talk to a woman like you would a child. Hey, you know, sugar and a lot of carbs, they actually aren't that good for you. Unless you're going to expend a lot of energy, I think I might get into some tuna. Something like that.
I hate you so much.
But it's not your fault. It's really just being a woman.
Okay, thank you. Bye now.
I got to give it to her. She had the self-awareness to recognize what was happening and not get suckered into doing the meme while the meme is being explained to her. All right, you guys, you ready to get hyped? You ready to get up? Here's your morning schizo edit. Because this is a morning show after all. Let's manifest this. And another one. This one had me howling at the moon last night. All right, we're going to talk about immigration stuff in a little bit, but we've got some other things to go through first. Free J6ers singing God Bless the USA. Here's your wholesome content for the day. We got a couple of these. We got a couple wholesome content ones. It's 3 minutes long. If I had more time today, I would play through the whole thing, but I'm not going to watch the whole thing. Just enough. These are the political prisoners with a stroke of a pen. That's all it took. The stroke of a pen, and he freed him.
If tomorrow all things were gone, I'd worked for all my life, and I had to to start again with just my children and my wife. I thank my lucky stars to be living here today, 'cause the flag still stands for freedom, and they can't take that away. And I'm proud to be an American, where at least I know I'm free. And I won't forget the men who died, who gave that right to me. And I gladly stand up next to you and defend her still today. 'Cause there ain't no doubt I love this land. God bless the USA.
I was reading some reports today about what some of them have been going through. I wasn't going to share it on this show because this is a winning show, and this is winning. But the backside of winning is going to be justice, and these people deserve justice. I don't want to hear from any of the rest of you about hardships that you've gone through compared to these guys. They 100% have earned the right to stand out in the cold and have a Lee Greenwood moment. And here's another one. This one got me when I saw it earlier. Breaking: Western North Carolina residents who have been sitting in FEMA hotels for months are now being moved rapidly into long-term, fully furnished apartments.
When I found out that I was actually going to be able to get an apartment, I was just like relieved. And it didn't really hit in until I like walked in here and saw a kitchen table and a bed. And I was like, oh my God, you guys got me cups. I mean, it just had like just enough to where I could bring in my own things. And then I started crying when I saw the bed because it's just very comforting. I'm like, oh, I get to stay here for a little while. So that was nice. And then we did hugs with the FEMA guys and Gordon, who helped me get in here. And then the dogs somehow knew that this was where we were going to be for a minute and had a band of a time. And I just like sat in here and was just like, yeah, I'm okay. I'm okay for a minute. It's a great relief.
Straight Buster says, I can't help but be angry that it was always this simple. Just required the will. That's right. That means it was an intentional choice to make these people suffer. Cooper!
Oh, hey.
What's going on, man? The Waste of Skin has joined us.
It is, it's so cold that like you step outside and it's just oppressive. And it's just like I woke up this morning to get ready for work and I sat up and I just sighed. Like,
You're like the... Imagining you having the face of the Virgin meme. Like the Chad and the Virgins. The Virgin is
Yeah,
just got his head
basically.
hanging.
And dude, I've got like the heat cranked up in my house. I've got like the heater blowing on me and I'm still just freezing. I'm freezing.
What's the temperature there?
It's warmed up a little bit. It's like, I don't know what the actual temperature is. The real feel right now is like 2 degrees.
Okay.
This morning it was like negative 26 or some shit.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
How many fingers and toes do you have left?
Oh, they're all there. But do you remember the other day we were talking about how you get angry at the wind for just blowing in your face?
Ah!
Yeah, that was today. It was just cold wind constantly for like 12 hours.
You start yelling at the wind like, fuck, stop!
Yeah, and then after 9.5 hours, you just kind of resign yourself to it. You're just like, okay. You just kind of get sad and give in.
It's like you have to go to a place that you would imagine that that the TV shows where they take the guy and they just like drop him off out in Siberia somewhere,
Yeah.
and he's got to really lock in. You kind of have to get into that same frame of mind. Like, I'm going to be standing here with wind in my face for the rest of my life, and I need to learn how to deal with it because otherwise you just can't tolerate it.
Yeah, and you can only be angry for so long, you know.
Yeah.
You can be mad at it for like maybe 6 hours, and then you just gotta. All right, I guess this is it.
Yeah.
Which I was thinking about, it completely unrelated, but about being mad for only so long. I was listening to your last night's stream earlier today. Whoa. What did you say? It triggered a thought. Oh, I don't remember exactly what you were talking about, but it triggered like my memory. You remember like all those chicks like a month ago who were saying that they were just gonna like abstain from any kind of like I don't know, sexual activity as like a fuck you or whatever for voting for Trump or something
And it lasted
like that.
for like 3 days.
Yeah, and everyone on right-wing Twitter was spurging out about this. Like, oh, this is horrible. We're all going to die. And it kind of petered out.
Uh-huh.
Completely unrelated, but I was just thinking about that. Like, yeah, dude, women don't throw tantrums for 4 years. Come on. Give me a break.
Especially Zoomer women.
Yeah, you can be mad for like 2 hours.
Straight Buster said Dave Smith described it perfectly. It feels like the cold is yelling at you. That's really good. Oh, man. All right. Let's keep this. You missed the hype videos. Actually, you know what? You didn't miss the hype video because we're going to play it again. And we've got a request to play the other one again. And I'm a man of the people, so we're going to play the other one again.
That's just like, I'm pretty sure you just like destroyed the bass in my headphones.
You're welcome. Oh man, I cannot. We're on the best timeline, man. It's sitting here watching all of these things together. The fact that the schizo edit like that could be made of real content from the world. Like, these aren't AI videos. These are real things that have all combined into this reality. It's just, what a good time we live in.
Oh, by the way,
Mm-hmm.
it occurred to me while listening to your streams the past few days, and you were talking to the chat, and you mentioned a good friend of the show, Slutty Milk.
Mm-hmm.
This whole time, I've been reading that as Salty Milk.
They were debating that in the live chat at the very beginning.
Were they? Okay.
Yeah.
So I wasn't okay.
I said that it's slutty milk.
It didn't even occur to me that it would be Slutty Milk. So I guess that, I don't know, maybe that tells us something about you and your psychology there, Matt.
Yeah. I have decided it. It is slutty milk. Duffhead says he's been Roman saluting any and everything for 2 days straight and his wife hates him. Doing the Lord's work, sir. Yeah. You see Wyman's in the chat?
Yeah, I do. What's up, dude?
Slutty Milk and Wash Nigger. If you're in the King Pill Discord, you'll get that one. Here we go. We're about to drill, baby, drill.
Good morning, America. Just want to give y'all an update. This ship carries 1.8 million barrels of crude oil at max capacity, but will safely transport, carry 1.3 million barrels. It has not been in operation for the last 7 years. Right now, we are coming up the western side of Africa, headed towards the Gulf of America, because we're about to drill, baby, drill. And I'm doing my part to make sure that this happens. God bless America. Let's get to work. Good morning.
Yeah, baby. What was that? How many say? 1.8 million barrels at max capacity, and it's been doing nothing for 7 years. And literally all it took was someone saying, make it happen. That's all it took.
What does Oh man, his name escapes me. Commodity dude.
Oh, Ben Kellerman.
Yeah, Ben Kellerman. He's probably pretty happy right now.
Yeah, we need to check in with him. I should have him on the show to talk about some of this stuff. Because the I mean, there's so many things, but the Trump administration everyone's talking about like immigration and foreign policy stuff right now, but the energy like turbo boosting that's about to happen is going to be next level. Everything is aligning for it. Couple market related things here. Stan Druckenmiller went on CNBC and had some comments.
I know a lot of people have been wondering how you're feeling about things just from a market's perspective, from an economy perspective. What do you have to say today?
Good morning, Becky. Nice to see you.
You too.
The economy's very interesting. We're at a very low unemployment rate, 4% essentially. We've got 3% GDP growth. And I've been doing this for 49 years, and we're probably going from the most anti-business administration to the opposite. So we do a lot of talking to CEOs and companies on the ground, and I'd say CEOs are somewhere between relieved and giddy. So we're a believer in animal spirits. Paul Ryan was on your show last week talking about a 32% increase in business confidence over the last 12 months. I think that's probably a record in terms of change. So the economy looks very, very strong, at least for the next 6 months, which is about as far out as one can see with any degree of confidence. In terms of the market,
this was interesting here. He's saying that about 6 months is all you're going to be able to get. And he's attributing this to, he's connecting this to CEO and executive confidence. They're relieved, they're giddy. So this is the extremely boring,
Yeah, right.
old
Really
market boomer way of saying there's a fucking vibe shift, bros. and honestly, I don't know all the details of Druckenmiller's background. I just know that he's seen as a legend of the markets, and all of the guys who know all this stuff better than me all take him very seriously. And then he's got an interesting connection to Scott Bessent, which we'll talk about here in just a second after we get the latter half of this clip.
I would say it's complicated. We, despite what I just said about all the wonderful things about the economy, we have an earnings yield to bond yield, probably the most unattractive level, not probably the most unattractive level in 20 years. So you're going to have.
That's an interesting comment. So the earnings to bond yields being very unattractive basically is so the earnings would be referring to equities, so stocks, the earnings yield, and then the bond yields would be bonds, obviously. And yields are going up, which is foretelling probably some inflation, something like that. Like the economy is starting to overheat, starting to pick up. The problem is that all of this stuff is being signaled that things are going to heat up, but there isn't actually like an economy there. A lot of this has just all been on paper. So we need to like ramp up productivity really, really quickly, which would have an inflationary effect. If you're really investing hard to get that up front, it's going to have an inflationary effect. Well, we're already like barely holding back inflation as it is. And so this is driving up bond yields in this expectation, which is this is portending the collapse of the bond market ultimately. But the thing about a bond market is like it's not like people aren't going to buy bonds. They are going to buy sovereign debt. Is whose sovereign debt are they going to buy? So as the global bond market is completely on the rocks and on the verge of collapse, they're going to be trying to relocate into better assets. Like everything starts going down relatively, but some stuff's going down less than others. So they're going to be rotating into that, which is going to be an additional huge flood of investment into the United States.
Have this push of a strong economy versus bond yields rising in response to that strong economy. And that kind of makes me not have a strong opinion one way or the other on the market. I will say this, in my business, every change creates change in security prices, and having this kind of radical change from one administration to the other, in addition to what's going on in the private sector with innovation, then you got deregulation from the government, disruption. I think there's going to be plenty of change and plenty for your viewers to do. I wouldn't worry about the market. I'd focus on individual stocks.
I wouldn't worry about the market. I would focus on individual stocks. He talks about what's happening in the private sector, and he also what was the one other thing he said here?
In addition to what's going on in the private sector with innovation, deregulation from the government, disruption. I think there's going to be plenty of change and plenty for your viewers to do. I wouldn't worry about the market. I'd focus on individual stocks.
So reading between the lines, he's saying shit's about to go haywire. It's going to get really chaotic, and it's kind of anyone's bet as to what's going to go in what direction where.
Listening to him talk is like watching cement dry.
Yeah. That's why I'm trying to translate here.
Yeah.
And so one of his, I don't know if it would be right necessarily to say that Besant is a protege, but he's at least like very heavily influenced by Druckenmiller. The incoming Treasury Secretary. This is him. So this is Geiger Capital says, I'd follow Scott Besant into war.
Are you playing something?
Yeah, I forgot to change it.
The American Immigration Council that say that could reduce GDP by 4.2 to 6.8%. The Economic Policy Institute found that without immigration, the prime age workforce would have essentially seen no growth at all in the past quarter century. What is the economic impact potentially of the kind of deportation he's talking about? Where would you find those workers otherwise?
Well, let's go back, because I find all this pretty duplicitous. For my entire career, probably most of your entire lives, the academic economists said, oh no, absolutely, the unauthorized new arrivals do not put downward pressure on wages. Then, lo and behold, in this cycle, when we had the massive inflation, we get, whether it's 11 million new arrivals, or as President Trump thinks, 21 million new arrivals, it does push down wages on the bottom quintile, which I think is abominable. These are working people, Americans, who are seeing their wages get pushed down. So now it's what I always believed, what you could see, what you could observe, it does push wages down. And I would just say I dispute those GDP numbers, because if it were good, why wouldn't we just have a road from Terra del Fuego to the Rio Grande and let everybody who wants to come in? We could double GDP, but per capita GDP per American would drop substantially. It is about American citizens' standards of living.
This is the new Treasury Secretary. The new Treasury Secretary is saying GDP is a bullshit metric for the health of the nation. He's advocating for the people whose lifestyles are being destroyed by mass immigration. So he's an immigration restrictionist. And he's not just like, oh yeah, I think it would probably be good if maybe we kind of address that issue. He's like mocking them. Like, why don't we just build a road from Tierra del Fuego and just usher every single person in the country into the United States? GDP is going to go through the roof, won't it? I could not be more optimistic about the future. It is insane that we're getting this alignment of perspectives and talent and values in this administration. For the first time in, I don't know, ever, we're going to have American sovereigntists who are hostile to the Eurodollar system and to all the globalist institutions in both the Treasury and the Fed at the same time. For the first time in our history as a superpower, America has control over its own economy, its own currency. How could we be an empire if we don't even have control over our own currency? We haven't even seen empire yet. The empire is coming. And when people talk about the Don Rowe doctrine, they're talking about, you get Greenland, we're getting Alberta and Canada, we're going to Panama Canal and everything. It's kind of like, oh yeah, we're going to sort of expand the empire here a little bit. No. Those things are not expanding the empire. Those things are establishing the homeland. The Western Hemisphere is going to be the homeland of America. That's the center of the empire, the Western Hemisphere. And then the imperial component of it is extended out from there. I saw Duffhead here said, where'd it go? Did you see Luongo poo-poo Lutnick today? Yes, and this is related to the thing that I talked about, was it day before yesterday, I think, with the like end run around the SOFR system that they were trying to do, which would basically give the Bank of England control over the settlement of U.S. treasuries. And Lutnick was apparently spearheading that. And now there's a couple other things. He also looked. This is one of the kind of darker things I was going to get into. Lutnick does not look trustworthy. He talked a great game. He said a lot of good things, and I think there's probably a lot of utility to him. But the picture that's being, I guess maybe the bright side of this, I would say, is the broader picture as I kind of evaluate his whole character, is that he is he's in it for himself. He's not like ideologically beholden to anything. He's maxing out his own bags. And so he sees an opportunity here to I'm going to give over financial sovereignty of the United States to the UK. Okay, but I'm going to be the one involved in it, so I'm going to get my bag. That's the picture that's developing with him for me. But we'll talk about that more down the line. I got to keep it cooking here today. And then here's I got a couple interesting quotes from our old buddy Jamie Dimon. First one here is talking about Trump's tariffs.
Yeah, look, I look at tariffs, they are an economic tool. That's it. They're an economic weapon, depending how you use it and why you use it and stuff like that. And, people argue, is it inflationary and non-inflationary? I would put in perspective, if it's a little inflationary, but it's good for national security, so be it. I mean, get over it. Look, I look at tariffs.
Get over it. And then this one as well. This is at the World Economic Forum. Did you guys know that the World Economic Forum is happening right now? Did anybody know that? Anybody care? No. I've seen a couple clips out of there. I saved one. I didn't include it today, but a couple of clips from out of there where it's like a funeral, man. And they're like, yeah, we lost. We're completely on the retreat. We've gotten our asses kicked. Nobody cares about our values anymore, and we've got to figure out what to. They're completely at a loss. But here's Diamond's comments.
I mean, you got to look at Elon. I mean, SpaceX. I mean, Tesla. Neuralink. I mean, the guy is our Einstein, and so and I like to be helpful to him and his company as much as we can. I think it is completely rational for someone to look at our government and say it's been ineffective. We deserve good government. And I don't think anyone thinks sending another $1 trillion to Washington, D.C. will lend to good government. So government needs to be more accountable. It needs to be more efficient. It should be outcomes-based. I mean, I'd say department by department, so I wish them the best. It's going to be complicated. The federal government's complicated. You read about all the people in it. And so, if we could be helpful to them, and I'd love to be helpful to them. I mean, you got to look.
So Doge has the stamp of approval of Diamond. I was telling you guys that the other day, but I just wanted to play the clip to confirm it. This guy here, we've got Cav King Dale, an OGC boy. He says, Jamie Dimon up until Trump got inaugurated. Yeah, I have no association with him and don't really like him. Jamie Dimon from the moment Trump got inaugurated. Special message from Q. All true Patriot bankers, Operation Shatter Red Shield is go. I repeat, And our boy Stormy Waters says, whatever a trader tells you he is staying away from is exactly what he's quietly accumulating shares in. Same with all his bad-mouthing of Bitcoin while accumulating the entire time. Wall Street 101, if someone is talking, they're talking their book. So this is for all the doomers out there, especially my crypto bros who have been they've had a hard time recognizing Diamond's utility because of all of his hostility to Bitcoin. And Storm is exactly right. His hostility to Bitcoin is entirely Wall Street behavior. If you had plans to amass a tremendous amount of Bitcoin, this plays into the Bitcoin strategic reserve conversation with Trump and why to this point, I've been skeptical that there's going to be like a great big announcement, like a formal, we are buying $1 million or 1 million Bitcoin this year. I don't think that's coming because of this exact reason. If Trump comes out and makes that announcement, the market's going to just absolutely run away from him. They've got to accumulate the strategic reserve, have it under their control before they announce it. Now, the way things that are going now, all bets are off. This would have been my prediction up until the last couple of days. Now, I'm not gonna hold myself to that nearly as much. But there's the same dynamic here as what I'm expecting, what I have been expecting, that if you are truly at the institutional level very bullish BTC, then you actually don't want to broadcast that. Because if Jamie Dimon comes out and he's like, yeah, I'm all about BTC, well, BTC is going to run away. So if he wants to accumulate as much as possible, and particularly someone at his level is operating with the consideration of the nation state and the nation state's priorities and going to be cooperating with the incoming administration. So if the incoming administration is like, hey, we've got some stuff we need to get sorted out, this is our long-term plan, is getting a major stake here, but we don't want the market to run away from us by showing our hand too much too early, then there's an incentive there for all parties to just keep it cool on the outside. Speaking of Bitcoin, interesting little news drop here. Bitcoin mining helped Texas avoid $18 billion in energy costs. Bitcoin mining has saved Texas up to $18 billion by eliminating the need for expensive gas peaker plants, according to a Dari report. Through ERCOT's demand response programs, Bitcoin miners reduce energy consumption during peak demand, stabilizing the grid and preventing blackouts like those during the 2021 winter storm. This strategy has also supported the integration of renewable energy sources, offering a cost-effective, environmentally friendly alternative to traditional grid solutions. What's crazy about Bitcoin is, to this point, basically none of the actual utility of Bitcoin beyond the strict financial, like evaluating it as a currency or as an investment, like that's the only thing that's priced in so far. The market has not yet begun to price in the potential for Bitcoin as a utility, and once that starts happening, the sky's the limit. We'll do more Bitcoin stuff here in the near future. Jason and I were talking for quite a while last night, and we're gonna do an episode together here and talk about the insurance market and Bitcoin and the bond market and all the way all these things are connected. Which also reminds me, I'm going to be on the Old Glory Club stream tomorrow evening. So make sure you tune in for that. It's going to start probably around 8 p.m. Eastern. Okay. Pressing on here. Now we're just going to go through just a whole bunch of good news. First of all, CBS 58 meteorologist Sam Cuffle is out after criticizing Elon Musk arm gesture. Libs are getting shit canned from media jobs for criticizing Elon throwing up Romans. It's insane how back we are. They're now... So she posted on Instagram, as a woman, she posted on Instagram something like, if you're with this guy, then you're not with me, and like, fuck him. And she got canned for it. Things are changing so incredibly fast, which shows just how much people were suffering under all of this. Nobody wanted it. Nobody likes these people.
Yeah.
If you spurg out about Trump, nobody likes you. Everyone likes Trump. There's like this small little segment of the population that we've all had to tiptoe around and cater to and listen to them spurg out about their whatever gay thing they're into.
Fucking millennial hipsters.
Yeah. And nobody likes them. Nobody wants anything to do with it.
Yeah, they're the worst.
And we're seeing like the largest preference cascade of all time. Everyone's like, wait, you hate him too? Oh, yeah, I fucking can't stand him. Oh, yeah, I can't stand him either. It's awful. One of the guys in the King Pill Discord, I don't remember who it was, said that he's been at work and all the women in his office are all laughing and joking about Elon making a Nazi salute. And they think they're like, aha, it's funny. When the women are like, yeah, Elon made a Nazi salute, isn't he funny? We're like approaching terminal velocity. So a little bit of commentary on this one here. So IO says, I've been looking at lefty social media all morning, and it's fairly quiet so far on Trump's anti-DEI and anti-affirmative action executive orders yesterday. I'm not sure whether lefties are just waiting for their thought leaders to come up with talking points for them to use, or they're probably temporarily slinking away in defeat after the old-fashioned beatdown they just got. I'm a pessimist. You think? It's like, I think it's a she. I guess she's self-aware. So I'm inclined to think it's the former, but even so, it feels like we're a million miles away from 2020 right now. The lack of outrage is almost eerie. And
yeah.
Dale Cloudman says, I think they don't realize what happened yet. Haven't got their marching orders from the media. Everyone's still going nuts about Musk's Nazi salute. And there's so many things that people could be going nuts about. I'm going to go through all of them here in just a minute. But this is a kind of a bizarre thing that's happening where they've totally honed in on Musk making a Nazi salute, and they're ignoring virtually everything else. There's a little bit of hullabaloo about the birthright citizenship thing, which I'll get into here shortly.
Crocodile tears.
Yes. Well, they're broken.
Yeah.
None of their world exists anymore. It's like they woke up from some sort of delusion. And suddenly, it's like they've been in a coma for 10 years, and they wake up and what's happening? I thought we cared about Nazi salutes. Nope, no one cares about Nazi salutes.
Everything's happening so fast that it's like, okay, what do you yell about?
Yeah, it's a blitzkrieg.
Yeah.
So Eric S. Raymond said, I'm not quite paranoid enough to think Trump said to Musk, hey, do something public at the inauguration that will rage bait the commies into losing their shit in such an obviously absurd way that it will backfire on them. Not yet, but I might be getting there. This is probably perfectly portrays what I'm thinking right now. Like, I don't think it was an accident. I don't know if Trump told Musk to do something or if Musk just did it on his own, but I don't think that it was an accident. Devin Erickson says, the thing to remember about the super wealthy and the political class is that you cannot necessarily tell what they think from what they say. We, the working classes, only wield power collectively. Ultimately, the power we wield is the ability to commit violence. And the reason that billionaires and politicians must listen to us is so that we don't. Violence is the population's ultimate veto. But in order to wield that power, or the implication of it, or the implication of the implication of it, however many steps removed, we must build a consensus so that many of us are wielding that violence or that subtle threat. That means we must say what we think, so others like us can agree, and a consensus can be formed to motivate collective action. We cannot be deceptive or Machiavellian or employ misdirection because it's not a winning move for us. We must say what we think. If we keep our opinions to ourselves, they might as well not exist. Those with vast wealth or political influence have another card to play. They can just do things, or have quiet, private conversations with others who can. So their public words do not reflect their real views. It's not about playing 4D chess, it's about playing regular 2D chess, but they have a full set of pieces instead of just a pawn or two. Elon Musk doesn't have to tell the public what he thinks. He's a dude playing a dude disguised as another dude. You're not going to be able to figure out the meaning of every move because you don't have enough information. When he does a Nazi salute or tells someone to fuck his own fucking face, maybe he means it. Or maybe he's just being gross, man.
Victor Victoria?
Mm-hmm. Indeed. All right. Number 1, President Trump has just signed an executive order shutting down all migrant entry across the southern border. That includes designated crossings and ports of entry. So he has completely shut down all crossings on the southern border. Doesn't matter who you are, why you're crossing, nobody's coming in. And I just remembered that I opened another, I saved another tweet related to this. Got to come back to that one here in a minute. Oh, maybe I didn't save it. I didn't. Okay. We'll just continue. U.S. border agents have been instructed. This is from CBS News. U.S. border agents have been instructed to summarily deport migrants without asylum hearings, officials say. Sean Kelly is fully erect. You and me both, buddy. 2 Customs and Border Protection officials who requested anonymity to discuss internal guidance said migrants will not be allowed to see an immigration judge or asylum officer under Mr. Trump's edict, which effectively suspends U.S. obligations under domestic and international law to ensure people fleeing persecution are not returned to danger. You know, it turns out when you establish something like domestic or international law and then you abuse it, you weaponize it to take advantage of it, yeah, eventually someone comes around and they're like, yeah, fuck your law, I don't care. And these guys do not care.
Goofy to me that you have people who are not U.S. citizens who, for some reason, have like a right to a U.S. court hearing or something.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you have to like.
Why?
They're entitled to access to the country just because shit's bad enough wherever they live. The creation of that law, if you're remotely capable of considering second and third order effects, it's very clear that the existence of that law creates an incentive for people to make everyone else's lives miserable everywhere else. To abuse them. Oh, look at that. Their situation's really, really bad. I guess you don't have a country anymore because everything else sucks.
Well, I'm gonna bounce because I told the little man I'd play Halo with him. And
oh, hell yeah.
He's chomping at the bit. So I just thought I'd pop in and say hello to everyone because it's been a while.
It was good to see you.
So
go kick his ass.
I will.
All right. Another one. The Trump administration has ordered a change of terminology used by ICE when enforcing immigration law. Those being arrested will be called aliens instead of non-citizens. Those verified in the country illegally will be called illegal aliens. All right, you guys, you got it, right? They're aliens. We've been given, as Taylor says, this is Trump transcending into the sovereign. The sovereign has declared it so. They're aliens. We call them aliens now. Slutty Milk says, aliens are real and they're all going back. That's right. Hey, LMAO, you're going back too, bro. Josh Ham says, my work is building and testing very large generators. Think Google, data farms, etc. Last year, we did $39 million in revenue. They're talking about almost doubling it to $59 million this year. Huge growth. Guys, it's coming. Are you prepared? Again, the days of being slowly strangled, feeling smothered, feeling weighed down, feeling obstructed at every front, those days are going away. And it's going to be very easy and natural to look for all of the other areas where you are obstructed because you want to feel normal. You want the familiar experience. It feels normal and natural to just be smothered and hemmed in and weighed down and black-pilled and demoralized. So you've been wired to start seeking that out subconsciously. But all of that's gone. We have crossed into a new age. The greatest dangers for us now are the effects of massive explosive changes. So you got to get moving. You got to start building something. You got to start preparing, focusing on where you invest your time and your money, because we've been in this weird malaise and stasis for a really long time where nothing is happening. And now everything is happening. Birthright citizenship. Ryan P. Williams says the birthright citizenship executive order almost happened last term. We, that is Claremont Institute scholars, advised on it. It's gratifying that it's now done. We'll see what the courts do with it. For a very quick primer, see my colleague, Michael Anton, incoming director of policy planning at the State Department, on this old Tucker segment. So if you don't know Michael Anton, here is your introduction to Michael Anton.
Michael Anton is a former senior national security official in the Trump administration, a lecturer at Hillsdale College, and probably the first person in this generation to raise the question of whether birthright citizenship is indeed constitutional. Thank you very much, Michael Anton. You wrote this piece that I think began this current conversation this past July, and people were stunned to find out that this was not a settled matter. Most people believe this is etched on the bottom of the Statue of Liberty, but it's not.
Right, and I do want to give credit where credit's due to people that I learned these arguments from. John Eastman is a constitutional scholar and lawyer, litigator. He litigates constitutional questions, and Edward Erler, who's a student of the American founding in the Civil War era, who's done really the scholarly work on this. I learned this argument from them. They're two of my teachers. But it's true that it had kind of gone dormant for a while.
Dormant? This is Flat Earth Society stuff. So everyone believes that we have a constitutional mandate to allow the children of illegal aliens to become citizens.
And they base that belief on a misreading of the very first sentence of the 14th Amendment, which says all persons born or naturalized in the United States are citizens. They leave out the part in the middle, subject to the jurisdiction thereof. They either leave it out or they say subject to the jurisdiction just means you have to obey the law. Well, everybody has to obey the law. If you're a tourist coming from England or Canada or anywhere, you have to obey U.S. law while you're in the United States. That doesn't make your children a citizen or you a citizen. Subject to the jurisdiction meant something specific to the people who wrote the amendment. We know this because they said it. You read the debates over the amendment. They said it means that you don't owe allegiance to any foreign power, to anyone else. You're subject to the complete jurisdiction of the United States, which means you're not a citizen of another country. So it clearly doesn't apply to people who aren't citizens or who are born to people who aren't citizens, who are subject to the jurisdiction of another country. The Constitution is clear on that point. There's no statute that says otherwise. But decades ago, the executive branch agencies of the federal government just decided to apply this principle as if, well, we owe everyone birthright citizenship. Now, why do they do that? Why do bureaucracies typically, in our country anyway, typically act without authority? Usually it's to serve the interests of liberalism. When the administrative state starts doing something that it's not authorized to do and that no one has ever told it to do, you can bet it's not doing so for conservative reasons or for reasons that benefit American citizens. It's doing so for reasons that benefit liberalism. And that's what happened in this case.
So you're hearing the argument now from the usual chorus of dumb people that this, like everything that they don't like, is racist. Right. Correct me if I'm wrong, but the purpose of this amendment was to enfranchise people who had been African Americans who'd been enslaved.
Absolutely.
And so, in what sense would this? I mean, does that argument even make sense?
No.
And I want to take it seriously.
As you say, though, it's the racist is just a cudgel with which to beat up people whose arguments you don't like. So the 13th Amendment freed every slave. You had a controversy at the time where some states were saying, okay, you can free the slaves, but we have the power to make them citizens, and we're not going to do it. So Congress passed the Civil Rights Act of 1866. The same Congress, same year that drafted this amendment. That was vetoed by President Johnson. The veto was overridden, so you get 2/3 of both houses saying, free black slaves, they are citizens. And that also says not subject to any foreign power. Well, then some of the southern states came back with, okay, well, 1857, the Supreme Court ruled in Dred Scott that no black person, even a free black person, could ever be a citizen of the United States. So the Reconstruction Congress said, okay, then we're going to put this in the Constitution. We're not going to let you get away with this. We're going to make this undeniable that every freed slave and their descendants are citizens of the United States. So an
amendment designed to enfranchise African Americans born here, been here 400 years, 500 years, is now being used by Chinese nationals
and Russians too.
Russians flying into Guam or Los Angeles to have children here, that would be not the original intent. I think it's
absolutely not. I mean, one of the things that I find incredible and amusing, sadly so though, is the Russia hysteria of our time. Russia's supposed to be the biggest enemy the United States has right now, more dangerous enemy than in the Cold War. We're all supposed to be almost on a war footing with Russia, yes. And the president is criticized for saying maybe we should cool it a little bit and turn the heat down. However, we can't question the practice of Russian women flying to Miami and having their babies to get U.S. birth. So this supposed enemy of ours, it's a sacrosanct principle to allow them to abuse our system by giving citizenship to their children who are born here, spend a couple of days, and then go back to Moscow.
So the real principle that undergirds it is hurting ourselves. We're required to hurt ourselves.
Hurting ourselves, and of course hurting the president.
Right.
I mean, the Russia story is all about hurting the president.
In America, masochism being the operating impulse of the left. It's bizarre. Michael Anton, who kicked this off, thank you very much.
Thank you for having me.
This is the guy who is now the director of policy planning at the State Department under Marco Grande. Okay, continuing. Bill Melugin, breaking. In response to Trump executive orders, the Coast Guard announces it will immediately surge boats, cutters, aircraft, and specialized forces to the southeast border around Florida to prevent mass illegal migration from Haiti and Cuba. And it will also surge resources to the maritime border around Alaska, Hawaii, the U.S. territories of Guam, the Commonwealth of the Northern Mariana Islands, American Samoa, Puerto Rico, and the U.S. Virgin Islands, the maritime border between the Bahamas and South Florida, the southwest maritime border between the U.S. and Mexico and the Pacific, the maritime border between Texas and Mexico and the Gulf of America, and and support to Customs and Border Protection on maritime portions of the southwest U.S. border. Note, Gulf of America. U.S. Coast Guard statement, together, in coordination with our Department of Homeland Security and Department of Defense teammates, we will detect, deter, and interdict illegal migration, drug smuggling, and other terrorist or hostile activity before it reaches our border. And I'll remind you again of the story that I picked out and focused on of Bukele seizing people 100 miles off the western coast of El Salvador. And it was like $100 million of cocaine. And I was like, that's a very interesting thing to not just do, but to advertise. Like, he tweeted a whole thread about it and went into great detail on all these things. Josh Steinman says it was always easy. That they refused to do it ought to lay bare for all of us the simple reality. All the pain, all the suffering, it was their goal. It was this easy all along. President orders them, and they go. The maritime border in Alaska, Hawaii, all these territories, Bahamas and South Florida, U.S. and Mexico, Texas and Mexico. They're going to be surging boats, cutters, aircraft, and specialized forces. It was always that easy. And we're just getting started, man. Look at this. Dr. Ben Braddock says, we're doing things I didn't even know were a menu option. CNN is reporting that U.S. Transportation Command, U.S. Transcom, has been instructed by the Pentagon to prepare to use military assets, including C-130 and C-17 military transport aircraft for migrant repatriation flights. The military is going to be doing migrant repatriation flights. They flew them in, we're going to fly them right back out again. And the other story that I was looking for that I didn't save is that that Trump has. I was looking for the exact details on it, but Trump had ordered 1,500 active duty troops to the southern border, employing the military to secure the border. He shut it down. He's sending 1,500 active duty troops down there. The military can now be used to protect the homeland. What a thought! Imagine that you could use the military to protect the homeland of the country. Mr. Oblivion says you can fit 600 plus people on a C-130, and Justin says 1,200 if you stack them. Migrant helicopter rides, baby. General Pinochet would be proud. It's too much winning. How do we handle all of this winning? I'm going to get dehydrated. Let's see. This one here. Let me open it. Which story's next? That one. And then that one. And then that one. I'm trying to keep these in approximately the right order. So we'll do this here. So next one. This This is when my brain just started melting last night. Chris Rufo, breaking. President Trump has signed an executive order rescinding Lyndon Johnson's executive order 11246, which established affirmative action and banning all federal contractors and publicly funded universities from practicing race-based discrimination, including DEI. A massive shift. We're coming for the Civil Rights Act, man. That's what this all signals. They're going for the Civil Rights Act. He just straight up signed an executive order within hours of being inaugurated, rescinding affirmative action. Santiago Pliego says, Biden winning in 2020 gave our guys 4 years to laser designate civilizational load-bearing targets with posting, writing, podcasting, and memes. Trump is now calling in airstrikes. It's too much winning! Mr. President! Sir! We can't take it anymore. We're winning too much. I'm going to come. There's still more winning. This is from Axios. As Trump's team wrestled with the best way to handle Jan 6 pardons as inauguration drew near, quote, Trump just said, fuck it, release them all. An advisor familiar with the discussions told Mark Caputo. President Trump's sweeping pardons for 1,500 Jan 6 criminals and defendants were a last-minute, fuck you guys, criminals, their defendants were a last-minute rip-the-bandage-off decision to try to move past the issue quickly, White House advisors familiar with the Trump team's discussions tell Axios. Trump's move to go big on the pardons sheds light on his unpredictable decision-making process and shows his determination to fulfill a campaign promise to his MAGA base regardless of political fallout. There's going to be no political fallout. Nobody cares. Nobody cares about you. You insufferable soy boy eggheads. 8 days before the inauguration, Vice President-to-be J.D. Vance, channeling what he believed to be Trump's thinking, said on Fox News Sunday that January 6 convicts who assaulted police ought not get clemency. If you committed violence that day, obviously you shouldn't be pardoned. Trump vacillated during an internal debate over targeted clemency versus a blanket decision, according to two insiders. And you might complain about J.D. saying this, but you know what J.D. did by saying this? He gave Trump cover to make either decision. Nobody's going to, in retrospect, be like, oh, I shouldn't be. This is J.D.'s job. Make Trump's job as easy as possible. But as Trump's team wrestled with the issue and planned a shock and awe batch of executive orders day one, quote, Trump just said, fuck it, release them all, an advisor familiar with the discussion said. Trump's decision was a surprise to some Republicans in Congress who grimaced at the appearance of the new president condoning violence against police officers. On January 7th, 2020, we're going to get violence against Republicans in Congress. Not advocating it, predicting it. On January 7, 2021, the day after supporters rioted at the Capitol to protest the 2020 election, Trump decried those who defiled the building. But as his own legal problems mounted during his campaign, Trump came to embrace the cause of those charged in the riot. On the campaign trail, he began playing a version of the national anthem sung by jailed protesters who called themselves the J6 Prison Choir. After he was elected, Trump told Meet the Press on December 8th that he'd pardon Jan 6 convicts and defendants on day one. I'm going to be acting very quickly. He didn't rule out clemency for those accused or convicted of attacking police, but said we're going to look at individual cases. Early in the internal discussions, Vance actually had advocated for a blanket pardon. But the Yale-trained lawyer figured Trump wouldn't want to take the hit for releasing notorious convicts, so he gave him cover. The case-by-case review was onerous. Trump staffers wondered whom to pardon and who might slip through the cracks. Time was running out heading into Inauguration Day. Trump wanted to pardon as many as possible and get it over with, so he landed on clemency for everyone. In Trump team's view, all the prosecutions are tainted, the advisor familiar with the discussion told Axios. It's time to move on. Vance was 100% on board, said one Trump insider, pointing to a Vance post on X in which he noted that in 2021, quote, I donated to the J6 Political Prisoner Fund and got roasted for it during my Senate race. Trump advisors say they aren't particularly worried about the political fallout from the pardons decision, despite bad poll numbers. Bad poll numbers. They're coping so hard. They believe Jan 6 was essentially litigated in the election Trump won and that other issues matter more to voters. The pardons episode provided a lesson for Vance and others in Trump's orbit. See, they gotta tut. They gotta wave their finger. Categorical statements forecasting the mercurial president's actions are always a risk. It also happened to Vance during the campaign when he said Trump would veto a national abortion ban. The president doesn't change his mind, the Trump advisor said. He just made up his mind, and Vance got a little over his skis on Fox, but it's no big deal. The bottom line, never get ahead of the boss, the Trump transition source said, because you just never know. The absolute madman. You never know what's coming. Another one. The Trump admin is considering selling 2/3 of the federal government's office stock, per the Wall Street Journal. That could put more than 200 million square feet on the market as the federal landlord, the General Services Administration, oversees 370 million square feet across the country. So he comes in, signs an executive order ordering all of the federal employees back to the office, and then he might sell off 2/3 of the office space. So many of them are getting fired. They're all going home, giving everyone an RTO mandate, but not an office to return to. When you play with so many people's jobs and livelihoods with constant contradictory messages like that, you start to lose their trust. There's no contradictory message. Y'all are getting fired. You deserve it. From the Insider paper. Breaking, the Saudi Crown Prince MBS speaks with U.S. President Trump on the phone. Saudi Crown Prince tells Trump the kingdom seeks to increase its investments and trade with the U.S. by at least $600 billion in the next 4 years. This from the Saudi State News Agency. There was also Stellantis, the auto manufacturer, announced new investment in, I want to say, was it Ohio? One of the Midwest states. 1,500 new jobs coming. It turns out you can just do things. Mark Levin is losing it. Now we're going to talk about a little foreign policy. Michael Domino, Trump's new top official for Middle East policy at the Pentagon, in August suggested on the anti-Israel podcast of Glenn Greenwald that he opposed even defensive support for Israel from Hezbollah attacks. The podcast previously had hosted Nazi Nick Fuentes.
The big question is, what is the U.S. going to do? And I think, it's funny, we talk about the U.S. as, slipping into war, getting dragged into war, whatever. Last I checked, we are the global hegemon. We are the undisputed global superpower, at least for the time being still. And if the United States wants to avoid participation in a war, it has all the agency in the world to do so. It can make it very clear to the Israelis, to the Egyptians, to everybody in the region, that the United States is not going to participate in this. And I think you've seen some statements from the Biden administration about trying to emphasize defensive support for Israel, but even that, can get you into a potentially a situation where American F-18s are bombing targets in Lebanon and things like that. So it is a very slippery slope. I don't like to say that anything is inevitable, but I think you have to be concerned if you're a Middle East watcher over everything we've seen in the last 72 hours or so.
And as Ukraine teaches us, the line between offensive and defensive weaponry or military support, it kind of collapses into conceptual nothingness at a certain point.
Right.
This is the new top official for Middle East policy at the Pentagon. Mark Levin is blackpilling. So if you are blackpilling, you are spiritually Mark Levin. According to Grok, Elbridge Colby is responsible for Domino's hiring. Quote, despite Trump's directive against hiring staffers affiliated with Charles Koch. Based on the X posts and related web results provided, it appears that Elbridge Colby, who was appointed as Undersecretary of Defense for Policy by Trump, is believed to be primarily responsible for Michael Domino's hiring. A former official involved in the presidential transition indicated that Colby was responsible for Domino's appointment, despite Trump's directive against hiring staffers affiliated with Charles Koch. This suggests that Colby played a key role in the vetting and recommendation process for Domino's position as Deputy Assistant Secretary of Defense for the Middle East. If you want to be even more white-pilled, go listen to Elbridge Colby's interview on Tucker Carlson from a couple of months ago. And for more on Michael Domino, actually, before we get to that, let me address some of the comments here. Got a super chat from Seasider. 5 Eagle Bucks. We're amassing Eagle Bucks, folks. He says the scumbag media doesn't have time to react to all this winning. It's only day 2. Yes. Thank you for the super chat. I've got a thread coming related to that. here toward the end of the show. And apologies if I'm just kind of blowing through some of this stuff and I'm not paying attention to everything because I gotta get wrapped up here before too much longer. Another $5 from See You in the Camp. Thank you, man. He says, Drunken Miller is an absolute killer. Normies haven't even heard of him, but the rich consider him to be among the best investors on the planet. Okay. So, former Trump official who worked on the presidential transition expresses concerns to Jewish Insider about Trump's emerging Middle East policy. It's worse than Biden's approach. At least Biden wanted to fight the Houthis a little bit. The Trump administration's pick for Deputy Assistant Secretary of Defense for the Middle East brings a record on Iran, the Houthis, and the region that is alarming pro-Israel conservatives, having described Iran's missile attack on Israel as fairly moderate and urged the U.S. against bombing the Houthis, instead calling for American pressure on Israel. Michael Domino, who is a military analyst at the CIA and an official at the Defense Department during the first Trump administration, has been a fellow at Defense Priorities, a Koch-funded isolationist think tank founded by allies of Libertarian Senator Rand Paul. He has called for a reduced U.S. presence in the Middle East and argued that the U.S. does not have any critical interests in the region. In a webinar in February 2024 with Defense Priorities, Domino, who was sworn in on Monday, declared that the Middle East does not really matter for U.S. interests, arguing that vital or existential threats in the Middle East are best characterized as minimal to non-existent, and that the U.S.'s role in the region has not provided any benefits. He said the U.S. can prevent terrorist threats emanating from the region without a major military presence, instead using diplomacy, leaning on local actors, intelligence monitoring, and long-range strikes. He said the U.S. should significantly reduce its troop presence in the region, remove military outposts in Iraq, Syria, and the Levant, and ultimately reassess its presence in the Gulf. Reassess its presence in the Gulf. The people that try to tell you that Iran is somehow going to take over the Middle East, I think it's fear-mongering, and I think it's pablum, and it's not supported by the facts, Domino said in a February 2024 radio interview. Iran's military has limited conventional force projection capabilities, he said in a co-written November 2023 policy paper. Domino, after Iran's second ballistic missile attack on Israel last year, dismissed the attack as a fairly moderate response to Israeli operations against Tehran and its terrorist proxy groups, and suggested that Iran was holding back. I think similarly the Iranians are going to try to hold back, Domino told Newsweek, maybe in the hopes that the Harris administration is more willing to move back to something that looks like the JCPOA or something similar. He has vocally opposed attacking Iran's nuclear program, suggesting that an Israeli attack could lead Iran to release its restraint, and elsewhere praised former President Biden for pressuring Israel not to attack such sites in April of 2024. Domino told Bloomberg that he did not believe Iran's first missile attack against Israel in April was designed to cause real damage, a conclusion disputed by most foreign policy experts on both sides of the political spectrum, and praised Israel for a scaled-down retaliatory strike carried out under pressure from the Biden administration. He has repeatedly warned that Israeli attacks on Iran and its proxies further endanger U.S. troops in the region by prompting Iranian-backed retaliation against U.S. bases. Rather than striking Iran or its proxies in response to attacks on U.S. forces in the region, as some conservatives advocate for, Domino said the U.S. should pull its troops out of areas like northeastern Syria. Addressing the war in Gaza, meanwhile, Domino said in the radio interview and his November 2023 policy paper that it was in the U.S.'s interest to use diplomacy to end the war as quickly as possible. He said that attempting to end Hamas's rule would only lead to the rise of Hamas 2.0 in Gaza, criticizing policies he said have undermined the Palestinian Authority. In an op-ed in January 2024 in Responsible Statecraft, a publication run by the Quincy Institute, Domino dismissed continued U.S. strikes against the Houthis in Yemen, which came in response to Houthi attacks on U.S. ships at international shipping lanes in Israel, as futile. Quote, while legitimate military analysts and regional experts knew these strikes were doomed to fail from the start, it should now be obvious that there is no credible military solution to the crisis in the Red Sea, Domino wrote, urging a diplomatic approach including ramping up aid shipments to Gaza through increased diplomatic pressure on Israel, an approach that has been anathema to most conservatives. He declared that U.S., quote, economic and national security interests are largely unaffected by Red Sea transit, end quote, which has been impacted for months by Houthi strikes on international vessels, and that the U.S., quote, can truly afford to do nothing there. He said the U.S. should leave China to deal with the problem by pressuring Iran and the Houthis. On the February webinar, Domino said further it's, quote, a stretch to believe that U.S. strikes can degrade the Houthis' capabilities or even deter them or change their strategy. He agreed with another panelist that the U.S. is, quote, addicted to airstrikes, but that they cannot restore deterrence. He also said airstrikes are more a therapeutic and optics-driven response. It's worse than Biden's approach. At least Biden wanted to fight the Houthis a little bit, a former Trump official who worked on the presidential transition told Jewish Insider. Domino's appointment is causing deep concern among national security conservatives concerned about the threat Iran poses in the Middle East. Quote, Domino doesn't believe that the U.S. should be focusing on our interests in the Middle East. When he does discuss the Middle East, he says we shouldn't be using our military there. When it comes to allies and enemies, he doesn't think Israel should be trying to eradicate Hamas, a Republican congressional defense staffer told Jewish Insider. None of these things are what President Trump believes or what Hegseth at least says he believes. An official at a pro-Israel organization said they were deeply concerned that this individual's views not only run contrary to the president's promise of peace through strength, but are a continuation of the Obama-Biden line of appeasement of the mullahs of Iran. Someone who states that U.S. has no interest in the Middle East or downplays the Iranian threat shouldn't be running Middle East policy at the Pentagon. Domino's comments on Iran echo another Pentagon official in the new Trump administration whose dovish views have faced scrutiny from some pro-Israel conservatives. Elbridge Colby, whom Trump tapped as Undersecretary of Defense for Policy, has opposed direct military action against Iran while arguing that containing a nuclear Iran, quote, is an eminently plausible and practical objective, end quote, among other claims. The official who worked on the presidential transition said they believe Colby was primarily responsible for Domino's hiring. Domino's hiring comes in spite of Trump's directive that he didn't want staffers affiliated with the conservative donor Charles Koch and his administration. Though some conservatives see Hegseth as more hawkish, the former official warned that people like Domino and Colby will be briefing Hegseth and will play a major role in setting policy. Quote, they have enormous leverage. They're flying around the region, controlling resources and planning and operations, the former Trump official said. They have an enormous amount of power they wield in subtle ways. This foreign policy is the same as Obama's foreign policy in the Middle East. We are at a point of choosing whether to allow Iran to become a nuclear weapons power and walking into a room who don't think it's a threat to the United States if Iran becomes a nuclear power, the former official continued. They don't align with the Secretary of Defense or Deputy Secretary of Defense. President Donald Trump had been expected to take more aggressive action against the Houthis, the Iran-backed militia in Yemen, his administration designated as a foreign terrorist organization at the end of his first term. He has also indicated he will return to a maximum pressure campaign to target Iran, among other policies that could conflict with Domino's more skeptical approach to U.S. activity in the region, though Secretary of State Marco Rubio indicated the administration is open to nuclear diplomacy with Iran. Some advisors to Trump, whose national security team also includes several Iran hawks, have otherwise suggested that the administration has been weighing preventative airstrikes to counter Iran's nuclear program. This is, if you guys listen to Tom Luongo and follow him, you'll know that he's mentioned a couple times recently that he is speculatively expecting, kind of cautiously speculating, that we may see a Trump administration-backed regime change operation in Iran as part of that's negotiated essentially in part with the negotiation on the Ukraine war. And it's kind of like me saying that I don't think people are going to be super happy with the way the Ukraine war is hammered out. He said he doesn't expect people to be very happy with the way the Iran thing is handled, but that it may be necessary as we're basically establishing a new global order. And the U.S. is effectively withdrawing from a Middle East presence almost altogether. I'll go listen to Tom to get that from the horse's mouth. On Lebanon, Domino argued in an interview with the isolationist American Conservative magazine in June that, quote, the U.S. and international community should do everything it can to prevent, end quote, a full-scale Israeli war against Hezbollah, saying that it would require the U.S. to step in directly to defend Israel. In fact, Israel was able to severely degrade Hezbollah's capabilities and eliminate most of its leadership without sparking a larger regional war. He also argued on a webinar that the U.S. troop presence in various partner countries in the Middle East was motivating reckless behavior, including by Saudi Arabia. He said the U.S. should decrease its permanent bases in the region and instead focus on, quote, surging forces back and forth from different areas of need. He said definitively that the U.S. should not provide any security guarantees to Saudi Arabia as part of a normalization agreement between the kingdom and Israel, and in the November 2023 policy paper described a normalization deal as, quote, only nice to have, not necessary for U.S. policy objectives in the Middle East. He and his co-author also dismissed the Saudi crown prince as an erratic figure who has repeatedly demonstrated poor judgment that would be a U.S. liability in a treaty alliance, and said that any U.S. security guarantee would embolden his, quote, worst instincts. For his part, Trump has spoken admiringly of the Saudi crown prince, calling him a visionary and a great guy in an interview before the November election. He also vowed that expanding the Abraham Accords would be an absolute priority in his second term, with an eye on normalizing ties with Saudi Arabia. He said there's no need for a U.S. presence in Syria to prevent the resurgence of ISIS and contain Turkish advancement, saying that ISIS has been degraded, that Turkey was not capable of or interested in further incursions, and that protecting the Kurds did not constitute a key U.S. interest. Turkey did step up its offensive against the Kurds after the fall of the Assad regime, but has since reportedly agreed to a truce with Kurdish forces. Domino suggested that the Kurds should instead seek to work with the Assad regime, and that Iran-backed Shia militias, which have been attacking U.S. forces, could take a role alongside the Kurds in preventing ISIS's resurgence. He said the U.S. should not further escalate strikes in response to the deaths of U.S. service members in an Iran-backed militia strike on the Tower 22 base in Syria. Outside of the Middle East, Domino has dismissed the utility of continued U.S. aid to Ukraine, arguing that Ukraine is incapable of repelling Russia, and urging the U.S. instead to push for a negotiated settlement to the war. He has also been a defender of former Democratic Representative Tulsi Gabbard's controversial nomination for Director of National Intelligence, and has criticized surveillance powers supported by top national security Republicans. Basically just a long line of things that make me like the guy. And all told, all together, it's very, very clear that the U.S. is going to be vastly diminishing its footprint in the Middle East. Okay, quick article here from The Spectator from Matt Ridley. Why has Biden pardoned Anthony Fauci? Joe Biden left it until the last minute to issue a preemptive pardon of Anthony Fauci for any offense committed since 2014 in his work on the White House Coronavirus Task Force or the White House COVID-19 response team, or as chief medical advisor to the president. Yet surely COVID began in 2019, not 2014. The significance of 2014 is that this was when the Obama administration responded to anxiety among some scientists about a series of experiments that made influenza viruses potentially more dangerous to people by banning federal funding for any such gain-of-function experiments. Yet from June 2014, money flowed from Fauci's National Institute for Allergy and Infectious Diseases to support experiments which led to gain-of-function in Wuhan in China via an organization called the EcoHealth Alliance. There, SARS-like viruses gained the function in certain experiments of becoming 10,000 times more infectious in humanized mice. Both the NIH and EcoHealth Alliance have denied any wrongdoing. So basically what they were doing is making bioweapons. Like, what is gain of function? Gain of function is take the virus. It's a humanized mouse. So you are engineering viruses that have gained the function of killing a proxy for humans. That's by definition what this is. We didn't do anything wrong. We were just making bioweapons. So let me get this straight. Fauci's pardon goes all the way back to 2014, the year he started funding the labs that eventually helped create the chaos we've all been living through, wrote the science journalist Simon Godek on hearing news of the pardon. Fauci hotly denied to Congress that he had ever funded gain-of-function experiments in Wuhan, telling Senator Rand Paul, "You do not know what you're talking about." He claimed that one particular narrow definition of gain-of-function did not apply in this case because it did not include animal viruses, only human ones. Oh, that makes it better. Besides, the EcoHealth president, Peter Daszak, wrote in an email in 2016 to Fauci's colleagues saying, quote, "We are very happy to hear that our gain-of-function research funding pause has been lifted." Senator Paul was pulling no punches on Monday. Quote, "If there was ever any doubt as to who bears responsibility for the COVID pandemic, Biden's pardon of Fauci forever seals the deal. As chairman of the Senate Homeland Security and Governmental Affairs Committee, I will not rest until the entire truth of the cover-up is exposed. Fauci's pardon will only serve as an accelerant to pierce the veil of deception. Ignominious. Anthony Fauci will go down in history as the first government scientist to be preemptively pardoned for a crime," end quote. As Paul hints, this is not the end of the matter. Biden's pardon applies only to federal prosecutions, not state ones. And it also makes it harder for Fauci in any congressional hearings to claim the fifth, since he could not implicate himself in a crime for which he is immune. More generally, the pardon seems to imply guilt. The Biden White House says not, but then the Biden Justice Department said a few months ago that, quote, "accepting a pardon from Donald Trump is, quote, a confession of guilt for your crimes," end quote. They cannot have it both ways. Dr. Fauci denies any criminal wrongdoing, stating that, quote, "there are no possible grounds for any allegation or threat of criminal investigation or prosecution of me." Had he been prosecuted by the Trump administration, Fauci could have been accused of at least 3 offenses: funding research that was forbidden, some of which may have led to a terrible pandemic, lying to Congress about it, and covering up evidence to obscure the origin of COVID. His emails and testimonies relating to the early months of the pandemic appear to reveal a consistent pattern of trying to deflect attention from the possibility that the outbreak began with an accident in the very Wuhan laboratory his agency had funded. In those early weeks, remember, people thought the epidemic would probably blow over and be soon forgotten, rather than pored over by investigators for years. A few days before the pardon was announced, Peter Daszak and EcoHealth were officially debarred from receiving future federal funding on the recommendation of Congress. Daszak was fired by EcoHealth at the same time, perhaps so he could receive severance payments, which resigning would not allow. There's something approaching full-scale panic in the American scientific bureaucracy at what the Trump administration may reveal in the coming months about what went on in Wuhan with the support of American grants and American expertise. And I read all of that to share this, and I swear to God, if this news is real, I don't know if it is. I would suspect it's not. But after the way things have been going, I don't know what we can rule out at this point. This guy, Nicholas Veniamin, he has Nick V Uncensored, a podcast on Rumble, 112,000 followers. He said, breaking, Vladimir Putin is reportedly seeking to have Anthony Fauci extradited to Russia to face COVID-era crimes against humanity charges as part of a deal to end the war in Ukraine. He said, FYI, this was sent to me by one of my sources, but I cannot validate its legitimacy at the moment. Time will tell. Makes me even think it's even less likely that it happens. But if this happened, my God, and I can see why it could theoretically happen. Elon Musk has been all about Fauci needs to go to prison. And I think these Biden pardons, the preemptive pardons, are going to be... there's so much happening right now that people aren't talking about it a lot. But I think that the entire legal system is going to have to hammer this out. And there's going to be incentives on from a lot of different perspectives where you don't even necessarily have to be pro-Trump. In fact, if you're anti-Trump, you might want to see this sort of thing resolved because you don't want to create the set the precedent for presidents just preemptively pardoning people to cover up crimes. That's a you're not going to have a nation much longer sort of a trajectory. So, all right, you're going to pardon him preemptively for killing millions of people and lying about it. I think it was Elon the other day who said, just wait till they find out about all of Fauci's crimes from before 2014. They start pulling on that thread. Being extradited to Russia and dying in a Siberian gulag would be a merciful end for one of the worst human beings walking the planet today. And I could totally see Putin having the same instinct. Like, we're going to extract an American scientist and pin him to the wall for everything that you guys were put through. It solves a problem for the Trump administration, builds massive political goodwill. If this happens, if you really, really put me in a corner and ask me to predict it, I'd say it's like 20% possibility that it actually happens. But that's a hell of a lot more than it would have been than I would have predicted not too long ago. Relatedly, Trump just killed NIH and federal research grants to Harvard and other universities with DEI programs. DEI will be removed from all contracts. Contractors or universities must, quote, certify that it does not operate any programs promoting DEI. Agency heads must take measures to deter DEI at, quote, institutions of higher education with endowments over $1 billion. The Attorney General will issue guidance to end DEI at, quote, institutions of higher education that receive federal grants in 120 days. Yes, they will just change the name. But going after, like, you can see where they're going by starting to, like, lay out all of these different orders. They know exactly what the problems are. The NGOs. They are encircling the NGOs right now. And I'll go into more I'll get more into some of the theory behind all of this and talking the real politic and stuff in a later show when I've got a little bit more time. For now, I'm just going to keep going forward here. Sumerian Pervert says, I don't think the left has the war chest to litigate everything that's about to happen. And this is exactly it. He said this on January 20th. Ben Braddock says, great time for governors to start doing things in their states, county executives, etc. Flood the field at all levels with executive action. Overwhelm their lawfare machine. Bleed them dry. This is why all of the libs are just flabbergasted. All they can do is post on Reddit and Blue Sky about how upset they are about everything. They can't. Beyond that, they don't have any marching orders. Who are they going to get their marching orders from? Joy Reid? The View? Nobody's... I said this right after the election. That the Democrat Party does not have a head anymore. The head has been cut off. It's a directionless body. They don't have anyone setting the agenda for them. And they're scrambling so hard to keep up with everything that's happening right now. And there's so much inner fighting and backstabbing. It's kind of like a microcosm of what's coming with Europe. Because the Democrat Party has been basically just a proxy for European interests. And they're going to get the exact same thing. Scrambling. No head, no leadership, no agenda, no clear trajectory, which means all of these coalitions are just going to fracture as people peel off from them. Meanwhile, you've had all of these people who are the people who constitute this preference falsification or this preference falsification cascade, where everyone's now coming out and like, oh, thank God. I was so tired of living in that world. I feel so good to be able to just speak freely now. Wasn't it funny when he made a frickin' he was throwing up Romans at the inauguration? Wasn't that great? Man, we just live in a great time. You know, people are just sick and tired of being bludgeoned with this nanny state bullshit for so long. And everyone has had a plan. And I'm talking at like the elite levels. They've had a plan for how to deal with what's coming down the pike. And increasingly, more and more people are starting to look over each other's shoulders. They're like, hey, what's your plan? Oh, I like your plan. Let's do yours. Let me just add my thing in to yours, and I'll sign on. I'm on board. And this process, as it begins to happen, it picks up speed. More and more people sign on to the plan, which means more and more people are going to sign on to the plan because people just want a direction. They want positive momentum somewhere. You can feel in the air the staleness that's just been weighing us down for years, decades. And everyone's ready to just have a plan and let's start moving forward. So yes, this is the time to capitalize. And this exists at so governors, county executives, like everyone start making your move now. And there's a ripple effect all the way down. That this is the time for us to start making our moves as well. If you've been thinking about making a gamble, career change, going and getting some particular type of education, starting a business, any of that sort of thing, now is the time to get started. Because shit's about to get chaotic. This guy, local historian, has a thought shared with him by his buddy in State House. But first, just as a little substantiation, this is the same guy who said this back September 16th. So if you can, take your mind out, go back to September 16th. Remember what things were like. He said, disorganized thread, bear with me. Recently spent some time with a guy who's a honcho in the regional GOP. On the first name basis with senators you've heard of, knows Trump. Their political doctrine is class bifurcation. That's the strategy they're mapping in 24 and beyond. The left has become the mega rich, mostly finance and tech, the welfare state, primarily poor blacks and migrants, and the Dolomites, i.e. those on the dole in one way or the other, academics, state and fed employees, military and defense industry. They're shedding union members, teachers and auto workers, and hold out blue dog Democrats in the process. Evidently, they expect at least another decade of loyalty from these groups because of ingrained ideology and voting habits. Complete separation from 90s-style coalition Democrats. He said, of which I'm sure he believes, they're moving away from mass media motivation and saturation because it's no longer effective. I don't believe this, not as long as the boomers cling on, but he believes they're past the point of diminishing return on TV and written news. The right, meanwhile, is organizing itself as a multiracial, multi-faith nationalist party. Whites, blacks, Hispanics, and Asians in private industry, with 100 smaller refugee groups that have been pushed out by the Democrats. These are average people not directly paid by the federal government. This is how they're rationalizing Liz Cheney, Dick Cheney, Al Gore, and Obama organizing on the same side by class. Economic and political conditions are stratifying the population into one or the other. Traditional ideologies are insufficient to describe and weather the change. This is not how Frog Twitter seems to assess things, either by gender, religion, or even age, but that evidently is how they really see things and what they're shaping the electoral future under. Purple Cabbage says, it's a big tent. Everyone's getting crowded in by their dependency on the old order. So the people who are dependent on the old order, or you could think of this in two ways. Either the people who are dependent on the old order are the ones who are all glomming onto the regime and isolating themselves off from everybody else. Or you could say that all the people who are dependent on the old order, who've been abandoned by the old order, are abandoning it and turning into a new coalition. So this is the prediction being made back in September, which squares up very much with how things have played out since then. And that guy who said that said this. He's worried. They say Trump has 2 weeks of this executive order barrage planned. 2 weeks. Everything that's been happening for the last 2.5 days, they are planning on doing this for 2 weeks. He thinks it's too much for the libs. They're going to lash out. The Seattle or Detroit mayor will secede, or a state legislature will annul their election. They simply can't take this. Please make this happen. Honestly, I don't think they have the will. I don't think they have the will or the political coordination for this. None of them are competent enough to execute something like this or to amass the popular support to make it happen. But the fact that this guy, this well-connected guy, is like, they can't take this. It's going to break them. We're going to keep winning. The winning never stops. We're going to pile wins on wins. Balaji says, this is the counter-revolution. First, I'm not surprised by the flurry of executive orders. While Trump 1.0 was a shoestring operation, Trump 2.0 is like Steve Jobs' return to Apple. The president has had time to think, regroup, and, most importantly, build a cadre of dedicated operatives. All the anti-tech actions drove new talent to Trump's banner, and Elon's men are the best operators in the world. Second, you can roughly divide the Trump actions thus far into 3 categories: anti-blue, pro-tech, and pro-red. The anti-blue orders end DEI, infinite genders, open borders, and many of the craziest ideas blues came up with over the last several decades. The pro-tech actions unleash AI, crypto, and other sectors that the regulatory state has been holding back. And the pro-red moves begin trade and land negotiations with Canada, Greenland, Panama, and the Europeans. They also begin withdrawing the U.S. from the now corrupted institutions it helped build, like the WHO. Some actions are executive orders, some are personnel appointments, some even begin as tweets. But taken in their totality, there is no way a demoralized left will be able to stop them all in the courts. And we're only on day 2. The war against the universities hasn't really begun. Third, where does all this end up? I know many envision a 1950s-style golden age, but in my view, whether intentional or not, this presidency will retire the 20th century American empire and replace it with something more like 19th century America. Less 1950, more 1850. This is the significance of renaming Mount McKinley, restoring the original name, Mount McKinley, as a shout out to William McKinley. I was talking to Jason about this last night, and he said there's something that's like cosmically profound about McKinley being the guy who is credited with setting off the progressive era. He's like the father of the progressive era. And you're going to get the guy who looks back at him and models himself after him in a sense, who winds up putting a bow on the progressive era. That is, the U.S. will withdraw from funding countless foreign wars, managing hundreds of military bases around the world, and maintaining the rules-based order. It will stop being the recruiter of global talent, the issuer of the reserve currency, the educator of the world's elites, and the base for every multinational. That I don't necessarily agree with. I don't think that it's going to stop being the issuer of the reserve currency, unless you want to get kind of technical with it and say, well, it's not the global reserve currency, but it's going to be the strongest currency. I do believe it's going to continue being the recruiter of global talent, because there's going to be a lot of European talent that's ready to peace out here shortly. Now, this has been the sort of hidden thing that nobody's talking about in the immigration debate. Everyone's talking about infinity Pajeets. What about German engineers? What about Ukrainian engineers? What about Swiss engineers? What about Scandinavians? They may not be the base for every multinational, But American companies are going to get nuked into the stratosphere by all the capital fleeing into the U.S. Instead, like the Russians before them, a critical mass of Americans no longer want to run a global ideological empire. This is exactly right. So history is running in reverse. FDR built up the gargantuan 20th century state, and Trump is winding it down. The Trump state is going to be less expansive and more vertical. It's going to be huge. We're going to get that multipolar order, but that multipolar order is going to orbit around Trump and his state. The Trump is going to become like an American office, sort of the way the Putin has become a Russian office. Another thing that Jason and I were talking about yesterday. American politics has been permanently redefined. And America is going to be the biggest, strongest dog on the block, but it's going to be primarily focused on its own interests. And it's going to be a vacuum hoovering up global capital, for better or for worse. All right. I'm going to have to drop off a couple of these, which is great. It means we've got content already ready for tomorrow. But I want to wrap it up with this clip, which is an unexpected source for what turns out to be a very, very good message. So it's not an unexpected source for a good message from Don. I'm talking about this guy down here. I'll play this video in a second. Christ is King sent a tweet here at Don the Pleb. Said, God put you on my heart, praying for you, brother. Love you. And Don said, I've been a bit remiss with this. I can't thank you all enough for the prayers along this past 5 months. Yes, the financial, probably prayers alone. Yes, the financial side has been helpful too, the financial aid, but these matter.
What's weighing on your heart and mind might not be what it seems, so let's uncover the truth so you could be free. Demons are like stray dogs looking for shelter. Sin, unforgiveness, pride, greed, lust, that's like leaving a welcome home mat out for them. And people say things like, I've always had anger issues. This is just who I am. Well, that anger, pride, addiction is often fueled by demonic spirits. Sometimes it's deeper than just anxiety or depression. It's not mental, but it's spiritual. And you can't just medicate or therapy a demon away. They speak through your thoughts. That voice that's in your mind telling you worthless, you will never change, you will never be enough, that ain't you. Roaches, they show up with their crumbs, trash, dirt. Demons, they move the same way. If your life is filled with lust, greed, pride, violence, that's like leaving crumbs out for them. Music, movies, and shows aren't just entertainment. If it's feeding your sinful desires, that's access. Proverbs say, be careful how you think. Your life is shaped by your thoughts. So if you're serious about being free, if you really want to be free, repent of any sin that give him access. Get rid of anything tied to witchcraft, lust, rebellion, or any darkness. It could be a toxic relationship. Because if your house ain't filled with God, empty space is still space.
Out of the mouths of babes, you might say. He's right. He's right. Don't give them the space. This is a preview of coming messages here on the show. For now, I got to get out of here because I got a meeting I got to get to. But I appreciate you guys showing up for yet another ASTROLABE. We're at 99 likes. Just one more. Just need that one more. Follow me on Twitter at RealKingPill. Join the KingPill Discord, kingpill.com. And I will be back tomorrow for another episode of the ASTROLABE. I leave you with Hulk.
When they took a shot at my hero, and they tried to kill the next president of the United States,